Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, you're understanding me quite correctly. And first of all, let's remember what a privilege and a gift it is to be born in a human body and to have this miracle of consciousness that humanity possesses. Of course, all creatures are conscious, but it seems that consciousness in humanity has potentially been elevated to a very high level. We might even be nature's own way of experiencing itself. What a waste, therefore, and what a tragedy that we've taken this gift, this miraculous gift of consciousness, and that we now devote it almost entirely to trivial and materialistic pursuits. That we devote our best minds to creating the latest consumer products and to creating clever advertising that encourages people to buy these products. More and more we come to define ourselves in terms of what we produce and what we consume, not what we really are. Look at the incredible, almost diabolical ingenuity that is put into military matters, that is put into aggression. Look at the manipulation of hatred and fear in our society, so that a miasma of hatred and terror fills our whole world. Consider the effect on the human brain of exposure 24 hours a day to reality TV, to the messages that are constantly broadcast on the television medium. It's as though we've been given just the most wondrous gift, and we have chosen to throw it all away and to devote it to the worst possible causes. What a huge mistake we're making. What a betrayal of our heritage. And yes, of course, we are putting ourselves and our world in danger. And what a tragedy it would be if the human race were actually to destroy itself, which is perfectly possible. We're capable of doing that now. You know, many people think cataclysmically in terms of some sort of blind geological disaster, but the greatest danger of all to humanity is humanity itself. And this incredible climate of fear and hatred that politicians, for greedy and selfish reasons, simply to promote their own power base, are manipulating and expanding throughout the world today. It seems to me that we've taken a completely wrong course. And that this is what the shamans mean when they say we've severed our connection with spirit. And that it is desperately important, after billions of years of evolution, leading to such a finely tuned, extraordinary creature as the human being, with this amazing gift of consciousness, that we should devote it to such hateful, such materialistic, and such trivial matters as we are encouraged to do today.
Thank you. Graham Hancock here on Common Ground at 100.7 WZLX. Latest book is Entangled, and we're talking about aspects of that. Okay, at this point, through the information that you have gleaned, that has come to you, the research of what others are being told of the state of our planet, and I recognize that we are at a choice point, but we're also at a point of my understanding of history that mankind has never been at before. I like to use Greg Braden's term, we're at a choice point as far as time and space, etc. And I continue to be optimistic, and I take personal responsibility for all that happens in my reality. And one of the things that I try to promote to others is that sense that we are each responsible.
Yeah, well, that is actually one of the most important and fundamental issues is the issue of responsibility. And again, I have to say there are huge forces at work in our societies today, America, Britain, throughout the industrialized world, which are working to take responsibility away from individuals. I personally am horrified by the gigantic growth of the state. We have it really bad in Britain, the nanny state, which makes all decisions on behalf of its citizens. And this is somehow considered to be a good thing, when in fact it's an appalling and a dreadful thing. We have to empower individuals to be responsible for their own lives and responsible for the decisions they make. And we can't do that when we have a government that wants to continuously expand its control and intervention in the minutiae of everyday life. And while I'm on this political subject, I would really like to make a statement about the issue of sovereignty over consciousness.
Please.
You know, we've had many human rights struggles in our society over the last few hundred years. We look back at the time of slavery with horror, and we're proud of the abolition of the slave trade. We look back on unequal civil rights in the United States with horror, and we're proud of the civil rights movement. Today, it's hard to imagine that gays were persecuted for being gay, that it was possible to be sent to prison and punished for being gay. We look back with horror on a time when women did not have the vote, although it wasn't that long ago, and again struggles were undertaken to bring the vote to women. All of these have been important, huge steps forward in the human story, but there's one fundamental human right which is totally neglected in our society, and that is the right to control and responsibility over our own consciousness. Now let me just elaborate a little bit about what I mean there.
Please.
It works in a number of different ways. Firstly, I feel very strongly that, and I'm obviously invoking freedom of speech here, I feel very strongly that governments are making a mistake and committing actually an act of wickedness when they punish us by sending us to prison, by destroying our lives, by ruining our reputations, for experimenting with and exploring the miracle of our own consciousness. But that's precisely what happens under the war on drugs. The hallucinogens, whether we're talking LSD, psilocybin, DMT, which I've been talking about, are all Schedule I drugs in our society. It is absolutely illegal to use them, and anybody who does use them runs the risk of a very, very serious prison sentence. And everybody just takes this for granted as though that's okay. I don't see it as okay at all. I see it as a massive transgression into the most sacred, the most sentient, the most intimate, and the most important part of ourselves as human beings, which is our consciousness. If I am not sovereign over my own consciousness, then I'm not sovereign over anything. It's absolutely useless for me to proudly say that I live in a democracy when that very democracy will send me to prison for exploring the miracle of my own consciousness. It's a really extraordinary thing to do, to march around the world imposing democracy on other cultures, sometimes by military means, while at the same time we do not have even the basic freedom to explore our own consciousness in our society. So this is one way in which freedom of consciousness is curtailed. And another way it's curtailed is just the incredible bombardment of produce messages which are beamed at us day in, day out through the mass media, and which teach us to think of ourselves not as sacred spiritual beings, but as creatures of pure matter who can only be defined in terms of what they consume and produce. And I think that what this has resulted in is a tragic narrowing down of human potential to the point where today we find ourselves with all our powers, with all our technology, with all our science, with all our military might in a very, very, very dark place.
Okay, and don't you feel that a part of that has been done on purpose?
Yes, I'm certain that it's been done on purpose. That's why my novel Entangled is fundamentally all about the battle of good against evil. And I do believe that evil as well as good are fundamental forces in the universe. And I would refer you to an incredible body of mysterious texts called the Gnostic texts, the Nag Hammadi library. These were texts that were produced in mainly Latin and Greek in the early centuries of the Christian era, the first 200 or 300 years after Christ. which were then